Hey, what's up? I'm not allowing myself to get distracted anymore. Junpei, Clover, and Lotus slipped out of the laboratory, slamming the door shut behind them. All three collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Oh yeah, it was on fire. Junpei's heart was pounding in his chest, and his whole body felt weak. He inhaled gulps of clear air, and with each one he could feel his body begin to calm down. Alright, let's go. They nodded to each other and started off down the hallway. For long, they found a few new doors, but all of them were locked. Soon they had tried all the doors but one. The final door sat in a corner of the hallway. Junpei grabbed the door handle and was about to pull it open when a voice cried out behind him. It was neither Clover nor Lotus, but he recognized it. There was no doubt. The voice belonged to Junpei. He spun around. There, at the end of the hall, Junpei saw human figures running toward him. 3 of them. June, Santa, and 7. They stopped short in front of Junpei and his companions, gasping for air. Hey, what are you guys doing here? What? But we didn't. Before he could finish, Clover spoke. Guys, could you come over here? She was standing near the end of a small hallway that branched off to the right. The rest of them ran over to her, curious as to what she'd found. There was something on the wall at the end of the hallway. In lab. A map of the ship's interior. It said Sea Duck on it. Sea Duck. Yes, that's right. They're now having ducks. Most likely they assumed it was a map for the floor they're on. Door 7 and door 8. The map confirmed what they already knew. Both doors eventually led to a hallway where they had found themselves. In fact... Yeah, isn't that what I said? Till we find that 9 doors here aren't going to split us up. Might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we can't open door 9. That's how the nonary game works. Boy! Junpei looked at the map of the ship's interior again. As he looked more closely, his surprise and excitement gave way to wariness. One by one, the others saw what he'd seen. As one, they all moved back toward the door Junpei had only a moment ago been ready to open. He pulled the map of the ship's interior off the wall, put it in his pocket, and followed the others. The 6 of them stood in front of the door, arrayed in a semicircle, jacking each other off. Santa stepped forward. He took hold of the door and spoke, without looking back at the other 5. Ready? I'm going to open it. They nodded their silent assent. Their silent asses. With a deep breath, Santa threw open the door. Awesome. They poured through the doorway and into the room. Even without looking around, each one of them knew where they were. They were just where the map had said they would be. The same room they'd been in not so very long ago. The tremendous central hospital room with empty beds from wall to wall. I see. I believe I understand what you're saying. Yep, we're gonna skip this part. Skippity skip. Skippity skoo. The key? Ain't that what I just said? Talking about the Jupiter key. Found it in the operating room. Here. 7 tossed something small and metallic toward Junpei. He caught it and found that the object was... Oh my god. On it is something that engraved a symbol very similar to a 4. He looked over at June, who nodded back. It had to be the Jupiter symbol. I'm gonna let you hold on to that, alright? Yeah, got it. Well, I got something for you too then. Here. It's a Saturn key card. We found it in the kitchen. I might lose it. It's probably better if you hold on to it. That way it won't be my fault if it gets lost. And with that, she pressed it into Junpei's hand. He felt slightly less than honored. As a group, they now had 3 keys that had not been used. The Earth key, which had been found in the laboratory. The Jupiter key, which 7 had just handed to Junpei. And the Saturn key card, which Lotus had just handed to Junpei. Yep, skippity skoo. Doubly doo. I got a poo. Okay. This time I'm gonna make a different choice. I'm asking if there's any reason we came back here. Nope! No, that's a good question. Junpei looked off into the distance thoughtfully. Lotus sighed and shook her head. I can't believe this. You guys followed me here, but you don't even know why? Nah. Junpei, you got the solar system keys, don't you? He did. He pulled them out. Well, that was forward. The Saturn key card? And the Earth key. Junpei didn't see what they had to do with anything. Oh my god. Both he and Santa were completely lost. I know I made the answer, but come on. Fortunately, June took pity on them. You guys are fucking idiots. Don't you remember the elevator? On C deck, where we are now, there was a big elevator behind the stairs, remember? You fucking goldfish. Okay. Another choice. June was probably afraid of being locked up alone with the boy. Dumb. After a little thought, Junpei decided that she had to be nervous about being locked in such a small space alone with a boy. Ugh! In such a way, it was kind of cute. Very demure, you could say, he thought. Still, even though it wasn't exactly roomy in the elevator, they weren't going to be pressed up against one another. At least they didn't have to be. Still, it was making her nervous. Junpei couldn't help but think how innocent she was. Come on, let's go. Again, he stepped toward the elevator. And again, he felt himself restrained. I said, wait a minute. Why? Aren't you afraid, Jumpy? Afraid of what? Well, I've never, drowned before. She'd never been in an elevator with a man alone before. Even so, she still seemed awfully alarmed. I might get wet. What? Wait, that is rather forward. Down there. Well, I mean, of course you would. That's the way it works. I mean, I've never heard of anyone getting soaking wet somewhere else. That's true. Alright. That was worth it. You don't mind? Mind what? Getting wet? I don't know. I think I'd probably, like it. Gosh, Jumpy, you're so brave. Really? I mean, I kind of think any guy would do the same thing, What happens, happens, right? If you get the chance, you just gotta go for it. That's what a man's supposed to do, I guess. You're so cool, Jumpy. I really admire you. That doesn't really seem like the sort of thing you ought to admire someone for. I'm really scared. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you've never done it before. Yeah, so I don't think I'll be able to last very long, and then it'll be over. Over? Yes. I'll go to heaven. Heaven? Feels kind of like you're floating in a space, and your mind gets all fuzzy, like when you pass out. At least that's what I've heard from people who have experienced it. Yes, I heard that too. Although I don't think the same thing happens to guys. What? Huh? But it would happen to men too, wouldn't it? It would happen to anyone. Once it gets in your body, the same thing happens to everyone. I mean, usually it doesn't go inside the man. I mean, generally. Yes, it does. Well, eventually it will. It's not like you really have a choice. Your body will force you to swallow some of it eventually. Oh my god, this is so good. They're dragging this out just like everything else, but I'm loving every minute of this. Well, what are you trying to do to me? Nothing. I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm just saying that's what happens. It's a psychological reaction to what you're experiencing. Was that really how it happened? And it occurred to Junpei that perhaps that was how it worked. Perhaps he'd been mistaken all these years. Had he misunderstood life so gravely? Oh wow, the thought terrified him. Junpei seemed to be entirely oblivious to Junpei's mounting confusion and terror. I know most men probably have larger lungs, but even then, I don't think you could hold your breath for 20 or even 10 minutes. Eventually, you'd have to breathe, and the water would get into your lungs. Once that happens, your body won't be able to get oxygen anymore, and you'll start to feel a floaty feeling as you pass out. Huh? Ha ha ha. Finally, Junpei understood. He understood what June was trying to say and why she was so scared. Yeah, you're right. You wouldn't last very long. See? Alright, I want to go through door 6. Junpei flipped open the piece of paper. Read, Junpei, door 6. Of course it did. He had written it after all. That's a problem. June spoke barely above a whisper. They all knew what she'd said. None of these teams will be able to go through the doors they want. Clover and I chose door 1. Lotus and I chose door 2. It's not enough people to open a numbered door, however. The digital routes don't match up either. We got a similar problem. June, Junpei, and I want to go through door 6, but our digital route is 5. If we're going to open that door, we need a 1. Damn. What are we going to do now? What are we going to do? Junpei crossed his arms and did his best to put his thoughts in order. The others followed suit, but with little result. Eventually, Clover broke the silence. Why don't 7 and Lotus go through door 1? With me. Their face was cold and flat, as was their voice, but our logic was sound. 7 and Lotus looked at each other. Yep. First problem resolved, Ace spoke up. What about me? Isn't that obvious? Wasn't one of the teams just complaining they don't have a 1? I mean, I should join Santa's team? Clover nodded, her face still cold and emotionless. Her attitude and posture could not have been more different than the energetic girl only a few hours before. No one seemed ready to contradict her. Her response was understandable, given the horrible situation in which she had found herself, but even so. I understand. I'll go through door 6 then. If we do as Clover has suggested, we can all pass through a numbered door. No one will be left behind. This seems to be the most reasonable solution. 7? Lotus? What do you guys think? I don't have a problem with it. Me either. Alright then, we're good to go. Eyelash, Junpei, and the other 6 had managed to separate themselves into 2 teams. Clover, 7, and Lotus headed into A deck, where door 1 was, near the main staircase. Junpei, June, Ace, and Santa, however, took the elevator to E deck. The ride to E deck was a silent one. Alright, let's go. Santa's words jolted them to action, and they stepped out of the elevator into a long, straight hallway. Before long, they arrived in front of door 6. One by one, they put their palms over the red. With a soft electronic noise, it authenticated each of them. That was so soft. Nerp. The door opened, and all at once the 4 of them let through it. Fortunately, the dead was located easily enough. This one had been placed quite close to the door they'd entered through. They gathered around it quickly, and hurriedly placed their palms on it for authentication one by one. Facing. It stopped. Yep, it stopped. Facing, the countdown had ceased, but Junpei's heart was still pounding in his chest like a frantic, thunderous drum. It felt as though it might shake itself up and out of his throat. He'd been through the doors 3 times before, but repetition had not dulled the experience. He was not anxious to find it dull, however. He hoped to be free of the ridiculous game long before that happened. Alright, let's go. With that attempt at good humor, Junpei took a deep breath and began to walk. He jogged down the stairs at the end of the hallway and found himself staring at a large door. It was a heavy thing, made of iron, and more than a little threatening. He took a hold of the bar that served as its doorknob and shoved it down. I would think you'd need to twist that, but whatever. The room beyond stopped him in his tracks. Jeez, it was gargantuan and made entirely of metal. None of the accents of wood or tile he'd seen in the rest of the ship. This room was purely functional, but utterly tremendous. Whoa, what the hell is this? Santa got out a few words before awe stole the rest of them. The rest were too stunned to offer anything more than gasps. It was easily the largest room they'd seen, and yet it was somehow closed and oppressive. The ceiling was at least 2 stories high, if not significantly more. It was easily several hundred feet across, and appeared to stretch the entire width of the ship. In the center of that gargantuan room stood a massive rounded building. Even from a distance, the sheer bulk of it was oppressive. Junpei could feel the room, the building, and even the air pressing down on him. Junpei and the others were standing on scaffolding that crisscrossed the whole area. The proper term was catwalk, Junpei thought, although that didn't seem particularly important. However, we decided to include it here. Alright, let's head downstairs. Nearby was a long iron staircase that made its way eventually to the floor beneath them. They moved around toward the opposite side of the massive building, following the catwalk. They hadn't said much as they walked, but as they approached the building, Ace suddenly spoke up. This looks to be the steam engine room. The steam engine room? Yes, the thing that looks like a cross-section of a mushroom as a boiler. Do you see the 3 rounded doors near the bottom? Coal is put into those and burned, which heats the water, producing steam. The same thing that drives the steam engine. This one is simply somewhat larger. I see. If Ace was right, the boiler was boiling nothing as they approached it. The entire room was silent as the grave. However, suddenly, Junpei heard a noise behind him. He turned just in time to see June collapse to her knees.
Hey, what's wrong? Are you alright?
He dashed toward her and wrapped his arm around her shoulders to steady her. It was then that he noticed. You're really warm. Is your fever coming back? Yes, it probably is. But I'm fine. Please don't worry about me. I just need to rest and I'll be fine. Her voice was weak and forced, and said a great deal more than her words did. Junpei carried her to the nearest wall and propped her up against it. She let her head fall back against the wall, as if she no longer had the strength to support it, and drew a ragged breath. Her eyes were empty, as if she was having trouble focusing them, and even speaking seemed difficult for her. Junpei felt his hand ball itself into a fist and clenched tight, his knuckles whitening. He had to find a way out, and quickly. He turned and looked at Ace and Santa in turn. They might not have shared the depth of his emotion, but they certainly shared his concern. He didn't need words to express the urgency of their situation. Alright, let's get started. Hang in there, June. I'm gonna get you out of here real soon. She managed a small nod before leaning back to rest her head on the wall. And that is when shit got real. See you next time.